All right, everybody, thanks for being here today. This is getting closer to the end of our Veterans Week events on Thursday. This is Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day to all of our folks who are up here, and anybody in the room. Happy Veterans Day for our veterans out there. This is our Iraq and Afghanistan panel, and we're going to talk a little bit with them. We encourage both people in the audience and on our web link. If you want to put your questions in the Q&A, we'll certainly ask the questions and answer. It's always better, especially since we have a kind of live audience. We're not used to it this year. We had a lot of nobody showing up with webcasting, a good crowd. Always great for back and forth and asking questions. And so don't feel afraid. Even the Army cadets here, don't be afraid. Chime up. Let us know what you think. Let us know questions. That's what we're here to kind of answer and explore today. So it is an exploration. So with that in mind, we'll just have our panelists introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Phil, for having me here. My name is Carlos Castillo, or started First Class Castillo. I'm currently a ROTC instructor, so I work here on campus with UMH ROTC.
I'm Susanna Friedley. I'm Master Sergeant Friedley. If I'm in the Air National Guard out in Battle Creek, I am an intelligence analyst for the 215th ACOF out there. But in a prior iteration, I was a member of the Signal Corps for the United States Army on active duty for 10 years. That's where I did my active duty Iraq experience. But I also served with like I said, with the Air National Guard on active duty with the Air Force out in Afghanistan with the RPA, so remotely piloted aircraft.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Wood. I'm a retired Marine, and I'm currently attending the University of Michigan to become a teacher. I'm in the secondary education to get a master's. I'll get a master's degree and then a certification to teach. And yeah, I guess we can talk a little bit more about our service history in a bit.
Is there anybody else in the panel? There's nobody panelists. So when we begin, I want to talk a little bit about your kind of why. We always talk about like why you joined. Like, what was your motivation? What would you? You look like these guys back here. Why'd you go in? Like, what was your motivation for joining?
I'll start. Okay. Well, I had a couple of friends who had already joined the Marine Corps and told me some good things. You know, I could do good stuff, get to PT, and you know, I had graduated from the University of Wisconsin. And what really drove me to actually go see the officer selection officer was Desert Storm, Desert Shield. So, you know, I had been contemplating that for a pretty long, and that dates me, obviously. But, you know, that's when I said, well, you know, the country is going to be in some kind of conflict, and I felt that now was the time to step up. And so, yeah, I showed up. They were very happy to see me.
I was sitting in your chair, getting ready to graduate with a degree that I couldn't find a job and had a bunch of student loans, and both of my parents had served, and I went down and they were like, yeah, we don't want you as an officer candidate, but you could come in as an enlisted guy and we'll pay your student loans. So that was sort of how I ended up serving.
I graduated high school, and then afterwards, I didn't really have a plan, to be honest. I worked for in the factory for a couple months, and my upbringing when I was younger, I didn't really have that mentorship. I didn't really have that positive adult role model ever really during my earlier years or my childhood. So what drove me to join is honestly the camaraderie and trying to, you know, the war on terror. 9/11, I still remember it like it was yesterday. So the 9/11, seeking that mentorship, seeking that person to literally raise me. I don't ever say that the military raised me. I would say that my immediate leaders raised me and to the adult that I am today. So I know it's a pretty long explanation, but that's where I come from, and I've gotten everything I could expect from the military in my immediate leadership.
What was your ranks now currently and before? With,
I'm currently in E7, Sergeant First Class.
okay.
I'm also an E7.
All right.
And I retired as lieutenant colonel.
All right, thank you. That's nice ranking in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, when were you deployed? Like, when did you go?
Well, we could start again. Okay, so I had gone on active duty through the 90s and then had gone into the reserves then. I had done my active duty time, but had real good experiences first in Okinawa as a combat engineer, and then served at Camp Lejeune with the Marine Corps base there. Then went into the reserves for a while here. I was drilling out of Perrysburg, Ohio, Weapons Company 124, and then got on back on active duty and then got back off. But okay, getting to my deployment, this was in 2003. I was seeing that things were going on in Iraq, and there was all the talk about weapons of mass destruction and this very clear sign that things could lead to a conflict. And you know, I had actually called up headquarters Marine Corps and said, look, you know, if you're going to be mobilizing people, you can put me on the list. And once again, they were happy to do that. You know, a couple of weeks later, I got notified that I was going to be mobilized. So I reported to Camp Pendleton, went through the whole in processing to get back on active duty, and then I went in July 2004 to Baghdad. At that time it was CJTF 7, Combined Joint Task Force 7, and that was at Camp Victory. And I was an engineer plans officer, and I served there for 6 months in Iraq.
So I was, we were contemporaries at some point. I was in the Army from 1998 to 2005, but I served in Iraq from March of 2003 until 2005 at Camp Victory. I was also outside of there at Camp Roadrunner in Iskandariyah. We put up all of the satellite comms at Baghdad Airport because I was in the Signal Corps, so did all the communications and satellite comms, put up all those antennas and that there. But served in Kuwait, in Egypt, all over the Middle East pretty much during my time in the Army. But I got stuck in Saudi Arabia and saw how the Air Force lived and how much better it was than what I was doing in the Army, which is how I ended up in the Air National Guard, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, contemporaries at Camp Victory and in Iskandariyah. So.
My first deployment was in Iraq, 2010 to 11. So honestly, it was calmer than it was during the surge, but enough to keep you on your toes. And then Afghanistan, 2013, and coming in 14. So Iraq was around the Baghdad Victory, Camp Falcon area, and then Afghanistan was the Kandahar, RC South.
Oh, yeah.
So RC South, if those of you that don't know, Afghanistan's generally more mountainous up north. Very hard to traverse in those areas, especially with vehicle. So you definitely need to get out on foot when you're traversing through those or negotiating through those mountain areas. But RC South, specifically in Afghanistan, our area of operation was in the Panjwai region. And if you remember the videos where the Taliban insurgency were climbing climbing bars, kind of like a boot camp, Taliban boot camp. That's where it was in Panjwai, towards the western side, southwestern side of Afghanistan. Then we go into Kandahar City, and then more specifically, we stayed in Fob Lindsay, which is south of Kandahar. And then our AO expanded even further to Spinboldak. Keep in mind, during 2010 Iraq, and then later on 2013 and 14 Afghanistan, that's when we started withdrawing. This whole withdrawal plan started initially around those times. And with withdrawing, you have to put people up front to kind of protect the people leaving. And so that's when it gets it get a little tricky, but it's definitely manageable. It's a systematic withdrawal. But but yes.
So when you're talking, it occurs to me in 2011 to 2016, I worked out of Jalalabad, flying MQ-9s, working, those are remotely piloted aircraft, so basically covering those folks on the ground, which on Route 1, which is the basically one big highway that was a circular highway all through Afghanistan, through RC South, all around, all the way up to Jalalabad, which is a place just north up by what they call Nixon's Nose, up in the highlands. And we would fly out of there all around that southern Route 1 to cover those folks and some of the Marines in Helmand and in RC South as they were withdrawing from some of those more remote FOBs to come out of those more isolated areas. But so when I'm doing the Air Force thing, we're watching over you all as you're coming out of those areas. Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's always nice having it.
Having eyes in the sky, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're doing that from here, which it sounds crazy, but psychologically you're not thinking about you're sitting here in the US doing that because you're still having all of those sort of adrenaline rushes when you're seeing the bad guys, quote unquote, right, coming after the blue forces. You're watching where they're coming in and you're still talking to these folks on the ground, and it's as if you're still there, but you're landing your aircraft there, but you're getting out of the aircraft, the weapon system, and you're going home and being soccer mom or soccer dad or making dinner or putting your kids to bed. But yet you've still had that same experience that these guys are going back to the CHU or what, you know, the tent or wherever at the same, which is really a tough kind of disconnect sometimes that you're doing that, but yet you're still expected to kind of go to the parent-teacher conference and go do those things. You don't get the opportunity to disconnect when you deploy. You can make that you can make that separation. When you're deployed in place, you don't always get to make that opportunity to make that disconnect. So that's, yeah.
What did you think when you were, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta talk about this because I can't hear. When you were deployed, what was your first impressions? Like when people talk about like when I first got off the plane, when I first got to country, or when I first stepped out. I mean, both before, because I think there's this, what you expect in your head. So I'd like to hear that too. Like, while I was on the plane, I was thinking it was going to be X. When I was preparing myself for X, but then when I got there, it was Y. Right? So I'd like to hear, everyone wants to start kind of like, what your preconceived notions of deployment was going to be, and what the initial kind of deployment. So we heard a little bit about the technical parts of your deployment. I want to hear about your experiential, kind of like your feelings about it too.
Well, okay. Well, so I was an individual augmentee when I got assigned to CJTF-7. So I flew in through Kuwait, and I went through some sort of processing, and I asked, and I was reassured that somebody would be waiting for me to pick me up, to take me to Camp Victory when I arrived at the airport. And of course I landed, nobody knows anything. And so I guess to say my expectation was I thought it would be somewhat more of a normal in-processing, and instead I was just stuck and actually literally, had to hitch a ride. I just waited and waited until somebody was going to my assignment, and I managed to get some vehicle space and threw in all my stuff and showed up. And they were surprised, of course, when I showed up. So there was a lot of it. This was in July, and I think they were still kind of figuring out what was going to happen. The invasion was done, and now we were going to be in Iraq for a while, and what that was going to look like was still really unclear, and the organization was still being determined as I arrived.
All right, did you question, are you expecting me? Can I go home?
I mean, literally, somebody said, oh, because my security clearance hadn't been passed, even though I had already done that too. Somebody said, oh, well, thanks, it's been great having you. And I said, hold on, I've come all the way here. And I actually had to fight to stay. I said, look, I'm here, and managed to get my clearance approved. Yeah, that was my initial impression.
I deployed out of 5th Corps with Germany in March, so it was not warm, and invading Iraq from Kuwait from Germany was very warm, and it was sandstorm season, so it was hot, lots of sand in the air. You couldn't breathe, you couldn't see. Oh, by the way, you're going to get slimed, so you have to have all your protective gear, MOP gear, MOP 4, invading another country, and you don't know what you don't know. So it was, interesting is not really the word, but we didn't have any intel. We didn't know kind of what we were getting into. We just knew that we were going north. Everybody, whatever vehicle that was movable was going north, and be prepared for chemical attacks.
How long were you in Mount Ford here?
Sorry?
How long were you in Mount Ford here?
10 days.
Whew.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Awesome would be the word I would use.
Right.
So,
It was awesome.
Yes.
for Afghanistan, I think I had different expectations than from Iraq, just because Afghanistan in general is just much more tribal. And the only experience I had, or the only knowledge I've had of Afghanistan before then was through my leader's experiences, like my Sergeant Martinez, who went there during the invasion in 2001 with 10th Mountain. He had a completely different experience from our experience. You gotta keep in mind, 13 years in Afghanistan, we're already well established in there. A lot of support. We have a lot of air support. Obviously,
Absolutely.
Sergeant Martinez at that time, they didn't really have as much support as we had now. So I knew that we were definitely going to have more logistical support and like ammunition support, and then we've already had a rapport with like interpreters. But what I expected is more kinetic encounters with the insurgency, with the Taliban or whatever other smaller secular groups within the area. I tried learning Farsi before going there too, and Lolo Dari, that was super hard. I just like to be culturally aware before I go to a place, but for me it was just very hard, so I just relied on my interpreter. Luckily that my interpreter is back in the stateside in
Nice.
California. He made it back. He actually has his own business. I know I'm kind of getting off topic, but I just feel like expressing my very happy emotion towards him. But he has his own semi-logistical business in California. He has 3 trucks. I think last time I spoke to him, he was in Idaho. So random. My other interpreter couldn't get a hold of him, unfortunately, so I don't know what's going on with him, but this one specifically is going on. So definitely it's just a different dynamic than Iraq. Afghanistan, it's not entirely different. So.
Absolutely.
So what about, talk a little bit about landscape, what about people? What can you say about the people that you met there, both your contemporaries in the military, but also civilians?
Okay, I'll start again. So I was at Camp Victory, and we would so we were embedded essentially in 5th Corps. I mean, it was 5th Corps. I was at the boathouse. I don't know if you know, I was at the lake, and
I was rowing
where
across the lake
yeah.
with cables.
Right. So
Yep, Saddam's
Saddam's
Lake.
Lake,
Yep.
yeah, right.
Yep,
The big fish,
fishes,
those big,
yep.
yeah, right, yeah. So we were in the boathouse, which was fairly nice, but we were actually, my office was in a bathroom. They had just put up a bunch of plywood and
With
so
the gold fixtures and all the.
yeah, it was just this sort of surreal. And we were in a feeling, and then I had initially stayed in the palace, and then we moved out into a billeting area as they were kind of figuring things out. But so it was, being a Marine and only a few of us in the larger Army organization, there were some, differences. I'm always one to get along, and I said, I'm in an Army organization. I'll be, proud of being a Marine and carry on traditions, but I'm not going to, have any issues or any kind of beefs with the Army. So, that worked out well. I would sometimes go over to the civilian authority, CPA Green Zone, and so my civilian job is, I don't want to get too much into it, but was with the State Department. So I also could understand the civilian side, what was going on, and I knew some people there too. And there were a lot of, my impression, disconnects. There needed to be more coordination, and not at a personal level so much as just what was going on in terms of strategy and policy. There just did not seem to be meshing well. That was my impression.
There were a lot of inefficiencies. To put it in a really, clinical term, very cleanly, there were a lot of inefficiencies. But I think anytime you're in a brand new combat zone where joint task force, or anytime you're in a joint environment, there's a lot of inefficiency. I think that when the expectations when we first got there, at least from what I could see, and again, I was at a enlisted level as a signal person, so I'm making comms happen. There were a lot of expectations that we just couldn't meet. The Iraqis that I had contact with thought we were, Jesus and John Wayne. They thought we could make things appear and happen that there was just no way we could make appear and happen. The United States had an image there that there was just, we couldn't create. With the logistics that we had at that moment in time, we couldn't do it. We did the best we could with the supplies and the things that we had at that moment in time. And the same with our chains of command, though. We did the best we could with what we had. I think in retrospect, had we been better prepared for the shortness of the combat and the length of time that the sort of civilian occupation aspect, the whole governance part was going to take, or was going to need to take, we might have done better. But that was a policy issue and a leadership thing that was way beyond my pay grade. I think just from what perspective I had, we moved mountains, and created abilities that we didn't even know we could do until we did it. And then it was just, wow, look what we did. I think that now looking back at it, it's like, wow, look how great we were, or look how great, you hate to say, wow, look how amazing I was. But you look at the people that you served with, and from all over the country, from all different walks of life, with all different levels of education, and no education. And look what we accomplished. We accomplished great things with very little substance. We were told to do it, and we did it. We stood on one foot and made, things happen. And that was, I'm really proud to have been a part of that, for sure.
I guess I didn't really explain myself. I'm an infantryman by trade, enlisted. At that time in Afghanistan, I was a freshly promoted E6. I think I was 24 years old at the time. So still young. I think 24-year-old staff sergeant in Afghanistan with 13 people in charge. And every now and then I would substitute and aim for my platoon sergeant, so we had 44, 45 people. And so for me, it was a big responsibility. Of course, I have my platoon leader, but he's also 23, 24, you know what I mean? So here we are in Afghanistan. So my initial impression of people in Afghanistan, it's just, I didn't know who to trust, to be honest. I didn't know who to trust. I told my guys, we didn't have any females in our, it's just a common term that we did, but I told the soldiers within the platoon, like, keep your weapon ready, because at that time we had also green on blue. Mm-hmm. Green on blue was operatives, either Taliban or non-Taliban insurgents, would be embedded with the ANA, the Afghan National Army, or Afghan commandos, and there you are in a small little base, and an Afghan commando or an ANA person on the tower with a machine gun would wait months until there were American presence within the base and literally turn on you, put that machine gun and start firing it. So that's a big threat that we had around that time, the green on blue. Unfortunately, there's just no way of quality control. We're trying to build up the Afghan army, and with that, you're going to have bad people in there. So unfortunately, in that aspect, I didn't have a lot of trust in the adults of Afghanistan. Now the kids, this is my second part, the kids. I'm always going to have a soft heart for the youth, always will, partially because I figured this out a couple months ago while I was here. Kind of like what I was saying, the reason I joined the Army is to seek that mentorship that I've seen, that I didn't have when I was a kid. So, I mean, that's just what I always wanted. Somebody mentor me, help me grow into an adult that I am today. I'm giving that back, 100%. I do it with cadets. I did it with privates when I was a drill instructor. I did it with my platoons when I was a platoon sergeant back in Germany, and my squad leaders. It's always about the kids. It's always about the youth and me. With Afghanistan, the kids, what we did is we got a hold of Becky from Portland, Oregon. She has a church that she helps run. I reached out to her and I was like, hey, Becky, can you send me some sandals and some blankets for some Afghan kids? And I have some pictures so I could show it to people later on. I want people understanding that we have a different side of us. It's not just combat. We have humanitarian aid. We also help out the people that are, more specifically the children, because the children have nothing to do with what adults are bickering about, right? I mean, ultimately, a 5-year-old has no clue what's going on. So that I took, honestly, besides our operational success, from our interpretation of operational success, that's my personal success. Giving a sandal to a kid who, Afghanistan has the highest child mortality, like in the world, I think. I mean, we Google it, but it's up there, and it's simply because of the weather conditions. Also, when you argue probably poor hygiene, but weather conditions in Afghanistan, too hot in the summers, too cold in the winters. It was snowing when we were there, so we brought blankets, sandals, and even my platoon sergeant, who has like multiple deployments. He was in invasion with Third ID.
Yeah.
Sergeant Franklin. He grabbed a little Cinderella looking sandal, pink sandal, puts it on a girl, and he is hardcore, awesome man that you want Sergeant Franklin on your team when you deploy, right? But I swear he had a tear in his eye when he's putting the sandal in, right? And so that, obviously, to me, it's a personal success, because the soldiers are getting gratitude and doing something beyond what was required, and the kids. Hopefully the kids by now, they're probably in the teens, maybe they have a different perspective on the Americans, the American Army. You always, the hearts and minds, the type of attitude that we try to bring in. So.
Good, that's good to quick. Did anybody else do interaction with the kids or Afghan civilians or Afghan or Iraqi civilians on that level? Helping them, giving them things, training them, those kind of aspects.
We did a lot of that in Iraq in 2005, but it was the beginning of sort of the insurgency, and we were starting to see IEDs. We were starting to see sort of that change from the gratitude of the invasion to the what's in it for me kind of part, where we were still reaching out. We were still trying to say, hey, there's a bigger mission here. We're, the whole kind of building the democracy aspect. The adults were now becoming Shi'i, Sunni, Kurds, right? The divisions between the communities and the divisions between the political aspects, but the kids weren't, like you're saying, soccer balls, the sports equipment, those sorts of things. We could still reach out and do that, but we were starting to draw back now into the kind of the encampments and the FOBs and kind of pulling back out of those civilian areas. And so we didn't get as much interaction. It was a lot more medical in a sense, and way less sort of that humanitarian thing. And I think that's where we kind of lost some momentum. We still made efforts, but it was a lot more dangerous at that point. And that was sad, because I think we lost an opportunity. It was, I love hearing that about the Afghanistan part, because once we started doing a lot more casts in Afghanistan, we lost again. We lost that momentum where we got the opportunity to do a lot of that stuff. That rapport with the folks on the ground, right?
No, I think you pretty much have covered it probably more in depth than I could, because I was more on a headquarters job. But just maybe one aspect of it was, as the engineer plans, we were working on the electricity grid. And in that case, there was a lot of effort given to try to, at least some people were thinking, this is important, it's necessary to try to show that the coalition forces could deliver on something so that people's lives would improve. And I think that was a good idea. It was just difficult to implement. There were just a lot of challenges during that time.
What kind of questions you guys have? From the audience? Are there questions from the audience?
If I could just make an observation, as closely as I followed this in my life, you three with that last description, you taught us all that this isn't Roman phalanxes, this isn't Maginot Lines. We're talking putting sandals on kids, getting soccer balls it's a much more complex theater than it used to be. And managing that, I just can't imagine managing that. I applaud you all and all those who stand where you stood. That's just incredible to be able to do that. And come away with some measure of success. And despite certain feelings, modern feelings, I think you did have a lot of success. But it took you saying it for me to realize it. Gray hairs and all, I finally caught up to you guys. Thanks for the insight.
David, so what do you, again, we have a whole room of cadets here, and some other folks, but a good smattering of cadets, right? And so what would you, you've been kind of, you left the country, you deployed, you haven't served just peacetime military. What advice would you give these cadets about being ready for deployment? Yes, we all hope definitely the forever wars are over, but we all hope for peace, but we know historically at least that's not the case. And so as we look, and there's another conflict somewhere, already probably brewing somewhere, the seeds of it, what do you give these kids advice? Sorry, young men and women, I hate to say kids, my apologies, young kids, young men and women. What advice would you give them based on your own deployment kind of history?
Well, we'll keep in the same order. It's a great question. I think one thing is just don't take it for granted what you expect to come up in the future, that something could come up quickly and you need to deploy. So being mentally prepared to adapt to whatever may come would be the best thing I could think of.
I think along the same lines, resilience, in the sense that being flexible and knowing that you don't know what you don't know, and know that you've got, wherever you go, you're going to have NCOs to lean on. As an NCO, I want to tell you that because you're all going to be officers. So you're going to have NCOs to lean on that will probably know the answer. And if they don't know the answer, they'll get you the answer. Don't be afraid to ask the question, because you're going to be in a position where you're going to be above them, but they may have answers to questions that you don't even know how to ask. Don't be afraid to use them. That's what they're there for, right? You use your NCOs, and take care of your people, because they're going to take care of you. You're going to be in positions you can't even imagine right now. Let them take care of you, because they're going to be the key to your success. This guy's going to tell you that, but I'm not in a position where I can tell you that, so that's why what I would say, let them take care of you.
Just my personal opinion, when it comes to experience, I think the best way to replicate it is through other people's experience. So if you don't have experience going, deploying abroad, you're at a great institution here in the university. I'm learning so much more stuff coming to the University of Michigan about Afghanistan and about Iraq, things I didn't know when I was actually there. So not only with us, but even with professors here within the university, like, be a sponge. Be a sponge, learn through other people's experience, learn through the military side, through the academia side, and come in with your own resolution. Come in with your own what's the word? A way to negotiate, right? Whatever that may be. So you go there and you're open-minded. You're not narrow-minded, you're open-minded, no matter what country you go to. I tell some of the cadets, you guys know, I went, we did multi operations in Europe with all the contingencies in Poland, Lithuania, France, Finland, Hungary, Romania, Georgia. They all speak different languages, right? Do I speak their language? No, I only speak 3. I'm sorry, but I don't speak Romanian. I don't speak Hungarian. But I have to go there with an open mind and try to learn a couple of the verses, like how to say hi, dziękuję in Poland, merci in French, right? Danke in German, right? I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but the point is, go there with an open mind and try to learn as much as you can here at the university and with us, with the military, and your immediate leadership. And that's the best advice I can go to. That applies to going anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Can I add on to that?
Absolutely.
Just another thing, I think staying current. When you first go out to the fleet, to you're going to be, when you're in the forces that are going to be deployed, you'll probably be up to speed with what's new. But the military organization, it just keeps evolving and evolving, and I found that. So I would do reserve billets that were, something like I was with the attaché program, and then I go back to the Marine Corps like 2 years later, and it's like, what? You're doing this? You have this weapons system? So it is really, as you move through a career, you really have to make an effort to stay current, to be able to contribute.
So they're saying it's a little hard to hear, but that's some microphone issues, so it's hard to do. Do you have, so if I may ask, do you guys have families when you're, like, close family when you deployed over there? No? Do you have, like,
Family there?
yeah, no, family here, like when you left, or family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit, we have a family panel tomorrow. We're going to be discussing a little bit of that too. Can you discuss what it was like for you to leave families behind? What it was like for them as you deployed? Kind of that. We don't talk a lot about it, but there's another half that we think about when we have to go someplace.
Go ahead. It wasn't a situation for me.
So unfortunately that was a bad time going to Afghanistan. My brother had cancer at the age of 25, bone cancer. So he was about to pass away right before I went to Afghanistan. And so he passed away while I was on patrol. So that was kind of goes to the resiliency thing, and the people I rely on, literally the person on my left and right, especially spiritually, emotionally, whatever. If you believe in, if you're a believer, if you're not, you have to rely on the people on the left and right. Because I don't think I would have done it. I would have been in a very dark place without them during that time when my brother passed away. Literally, I would never forget. Came back from patrol, got a phone call. Hey, Corey passed away. Team sergeant's like, you don't have to go on a mission next day. I'm like, no, I can still go on a mission. No, you're staying here, James, you're going to stay with Carlos, is pretty much what happened. And he's like, hey, you want to go back home? At that time, I said no, because I'm not even going to make it back for his funeral. It's a 7 to 10 day travel from Afghanistan to Ohio. I grew up in Ohio. I'm so Michigan. But
Good thing to say right now.
yeah, of course. But, that's the struggles that I had, and it's a real possibility that when you're gone away, unfortunately, stuff does happen in the rear. It's just try to have a friend, try to have somebody that you can rely on, you can talk to, you can express yourself, your feelings, and so forth, because that's going to help you tremendously. That's my big advice with it. Big advice.
I mean, I would agree. For myself, I was the one in the rear while my spouse was deployed when my dad died. And so my spouse had to come back from Iraq, and we both went from back to Germany, and then he went back to Iraq also with a baby. So it was madness, right? And if you don't have people, it's not just a job, right? You have to have people around you that are friends, that are confidants, that you can talk to about your feelings, whether you're in the rear detachment, whether you're out in, forward deployed, whether you're sitting in the office because you're at Fort Huachuca or Fort Drum or wherever you're stationed, right? You've got to have people around you that you are friends with and that you can count on, because if you don't, it's really lonely really quickly, because life happens while you're wherever doing your job, and it's more than a job, right? It's a lifestyle. But while you're doing that, your family, wherever your family is still going through life. So you still have to be able to cope with that. And there are resources, obviously, that you can access, but you still got to have friends around you.
Maybe I'll just add a little bit, not so much from the personal perspective myself, but seeing other fellow Marines, fellow service people who were going through difficult times. Either their businesses were folding up or they were having family issues, deaths in the family, and I think what you both said is really important. So I'll just say I hope I helped, and I saw others around me, support our fellows in need when it was needed.
Questions? Any questions? You guys are awful silent back there. You do this in class too? You guys quiet? Are they just quiet in class? Or?
Just gotta break the ice.
So who's got a question for me? You gotta have something. A question. Oh, there we go. Thank you so much.
I guess this is sort of more directed towards Sergeant Castillo, but like when you're in a situation where like there's the big threat of green on blue, like you're worried that like your allied forces are going to turn on you, how do you sort of like go back and forth between like constantly worrying that someone might shoot you in the back and putting sandals on feet?
I mean, it's almost the same concept as being a defensive driver on a highway, right? I mean, frankly, right? Except a little different, right? I would say there's some certain things that you could do without offending them, like, hey, I don't want you around me, like, just because of the increase of threat. But there's some certain tactical things you can always do. What we did is the way we delivered it is my team leader usually would talk to their commander. So when we did joint missions, we'd have them patrol in front of us, and we'd go behind. It wasn't because we won. Some people were going to say, some people thought like, oh, because they might encounter the IED before you. No, that's not necessarily the case. IEDs can go out in the middle of the formation, rear formation. You just don't know, right? It was more or less because, I mean, I want to bring everybody back. And like I said, I was 24 years old. My soldiers are all 17, 18, 19-year-olds. I don't want to call their parents because I didn't do something simply because I was afraid of offending someone, right? You understand what I'm saying? Not offending as a derogatory, like using derogatory names, but as far as like the body language, like, hey, you guys come in front of us, we'll bring them through here. That's what I'm referring to. You know what I mean? So that's what we did.
You guys have anything to add?
No, I mean, I would agree with you. There are things that you pay attention, right? Your head's on a swivel. You're looking at the third country nationals when you're on the patrol. You're paying attention to the atmospherics. You're looking at what's happening with the civilians around you. You're looking to see what they're reacting to or not reacting to. Things that are out of the ordinary, right? You get to know what's normal and what's not. When you go out on a humanitarian mission, if it doesn't look like every other mission you've gone on, you don't go, or you come back. You trust your gut after a while. You know what doesn't look right. If the Sandal mission that day gets canceled, then you go the next day because something looks different today. Sandal mission goes on tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you pretty much said it, yeah.
Other questions? See, look, I spoke. Yes, ma'am.
What were some of the emotions going through your guys' head when the withdrawal from Afghanistan happened in December? And I suppose they're after Afghanistan being more current.
I'll start out. I mean, I was pretty obsessed following the reporting in the news, and I didn't mention when we started out, but I had also deployed to Afghanistan briefly. I was actually the field historian for Regional Command Southwest, so kind of a unique job. But what it did give me, and I think caused me some additional personal pain, maybe, is that I did a lot of oral history interviews with Marines and Afghan civilians and other services. And you know, when I did that in 2011, I was at Camp Leatherneck, and then I was going out to the various commands. You know, I came away really impressed with the commitment that we had at all levels, from junior enlisted to the more senior officers that I interviewed, in accomplishing the mission, taking care of their people, wanting to do some good for Afghanistan. I think that may have been the common theme. And some of the Marines I talked to, they would say, oh, I want to come back. I don't feel like I did enough, and I want to come back and do another deployment and really give these people a chance to have a better life. And they were willing to risk their own to do that. So when I saw how things worked out, you know, that was just kind of disappointing, and it's still a bit, you know, trying to figure that one out. But yeah, obviously made a big impression on me.
I think trying to figure this one out still, and disappointment is a good word. I feel like, you know, I flew missions there from 2010 to 2017, so that was a long time to fly missions in a place, and I'm not sure what I know what I accomplished personally for Blue Forces. I'm not sure what Blue Forces as a whole accomplished for the people of Afghanistan, and that bothers me. I am still taking stock of that. I'm disturbed at the pictures I saw on TV, and I wish that I felt better about what I saw, and I'm still processing that.
There's a picture of this adorable little Afghan girl. We had to revisit this, do a Kaylee, or not Kaylee, yeah, leaders engagement in the village, and we were giving out. This is where I put on a Santa Claus beard, and it's not super tactical to do that because you're very very noticeable by the enemy, right? But it was Christmas, even though they don't really practice Christmas. Well, some don't practice Christmas here, but the majority. I put on Santa Claus beard and I had a bag full of gifts and candy. And I remember giving this adorable little Afghan girl a big Snickers, and the Snickers was like this big. It's like covered half her body, and she's about to open it, and we took a perfect snapshot. I have her picture everywhere, all over the house, in my office. Probably get a tattoo of her on my forearm, but that's the first image that went through my head about Afghanistan, unfortunately, because I'm just thinking about how's she doing. She should be 14, 15 years old right now. I don't know. I don't know. That's the first image that popped in my head was the little Afghan girl. Everything else, it made me feel better knowing that one of my interpreters is here. But we'll see. I mean, time will tell. There's a great quote from Charlie Wilson's War with Tom Hanks at the end of the movie. He says, "The ball keeps on bouncing," referring that the ball keeps on bouncing with Afghanistan. We might not go back. You guys might not go back, but what about the next generation? Who knows? Best thing you could do is lessons learned from all of us. Take our experiences from Afghanistan and apply it. So if and then you do go, or your children go, they're not going there blindsided. That's the best thing we could do, and hope the best for Afghanistan, for the people of Afghanistan.
Let's go, Ted. You're up.
Over the length of your careers, what do you think the most important lesson you've learned is?
Well, I'll start since, yeah. Well, maybe I'll put it this way, that, I'm going to talk again about the Marine Corps, but I feel solid about all the services, so sorry if I keep referring, that's just my experience, but I think you're going to find it in all the services to what I'm going to try to speak about. But I felt like, if I gave my best, the Marine Corps gave me a chance, and I always felt like I got a fair deal. If I put my best effort forward, and I guess that's something to take away, that you whatever it may be, and now, I've retired, but here I am at the University of Michigan, and I feel that I had learned that, through the preparation and fortitude and resilience and giving it your best shot, that's the best you can do, and something to live by.
Those are good words. And for someone that started at the University of Michigan, doing your best, being on time, which is 10 minutes early, right? You're laughing. But, showing up. Don't give up. That's the biggest thing. I think the biggest thing I learned is don't quit. Show up and don't quit. Because 99% of the population give up. And if you don't quit and you give your best, you're gonna do better than you can ever imagine. That's what I've learned over my career, and it's served me really well.
It took me a while to learn that as a private. For me, it reverts back to just mentorship and that having the idol for you. Once you're a leader in charge of people, your needs, my personal opinion, your needs are pushed off to the side. And now the needs of your subordinates, and that goes probably to any field, a good leader will put the needs of the subordinates in front of theirs, I believe, to a certain extent, right? There's certain scenarios where you got to take care of business, especially with family matters and stuff like that, but 9 times out of 10, the subordinate needs mentorship, And that applies to anywhere in life. As a parent, your need, once you're a parent, your needs are gone. Now it's your kids. Your kids, same thing. It's almost kind of awkward to say that, but it's almost like being a father or mother in the military, right? It's a real thing. That's why in the infantry we call it platoon sergeant platoon daddy,
Yep.
right? Platoon daddy. And my soldiers to this day will call me on Father's Day to wish me happy Father's Day. I'm only like 10 years older than you, but okay. But that's what I got out of the military. It's more than just the benefits, the paycheck, everything else. It's just watching the youth grow up, and become force multiplying other leaders.
Right.
And professors do it every day.
Yep.
So we're closing on the end, actually. It's a quick hour for you all. What final words you got? Anything that we didn't cover that you thought we covered today? Anything that you wanted to say that we didn't get to say today?
I'll just say, glad to see. Thanks for organizing this. Thanks for coming out. And I came out just to talk about what I think is important for those who have served, but more broadly, just our country, that the ideal of service, and something that is important. So I'm glad to see the respect for people's service that was expressed. I had a classroom of students. I'm student teaching over at Tappan Middle School, and since it was Veterans Day today, I got a chance to speak to each of the classes, and it was heartwarming to see the students respond and ask questions, and so that makes me feel good.
I'm just glad that you all were here, but just take care of your folks. You're going to be in a position to do that. Take care of your folks.
And thank you for having us here and giving us the opportunity to share our experiences and what we felt through our experiences. And then my biggest advice is just honestly just stay on top of current events.
Yeah.
And be a sponge. Be a sponge. You're always a student, no matter what age you are, right? Like I'm still learning new things every day. Be a student in life, and everything will come in a very positive manner back at you.
Any final questions? We close out. A lot of people online saying thank you very much. Thanks for sharing your experiences. So they were happy too, and we appreciate it. So thanks very much. Happy Veterans Day to all of you again, and all of you out here, and future veterans in the room. So thank you very much for all you do again.